Done.
Look at you. You fancy
Fancy
pants.
HomePod.
Oh, you say
turkey.
that now, but this thing is just so promiscuous. Anytime anyone on YouTube says anything, my Siri just starts doing it.
Oh boy. So we're definitely gonna have to be careful with what we say.
Oh, so
Huh?
it
Hey
doesn't have.
Siri, how are you doing today?
Oh, can't hear you because I'm wearing earphones.
You cheat. What
All
is
right.
that?
Is
See, it looks like some sort of like I don't know, sun goddess crown behind you that has a bunch of hue lights in it, Renee.
Fan that has light fixtures instead of blades.
Aha. Wait, so like
Pretty
it'll
cool.
spin?
Well, you can manually spin it, but
Okay, I was like, that's bonkers. Are those all
I'll tell you on
put
the show because otherwise
Okay,
it'll be
good
more
idea.
fun.
everybody recording?
Oh crap!
ah!
Hold on. God bless you, Lori Gill.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so used to the ease of Skype recording automatically.
Well.
I am
Well,
recording.
too bad.
Okay.
All right, recording now.
All right. So we're ready to go. Renee, would you like to kick it off?
Nope.
What?
Hard pass. I like you guys better. Also, I
okay.
sound like crap because I got sinusitis and I get made fun of.
Serenity, we didn't get you last week, so you're on top right now. Sorry, I put you on the spot.
I'm on top for what?
You can
To do the
lead us.
intro.
Oh no, Renee's here.
No, but
I
I
said
sound
we
like
said
crap.
that too. He said he doesn't want to.
Damn it, Renee. Okay, what number are we?
593.
All right.
So close to 600.
So close.
3, 2, and it is Thursday, February 8th. We are one day from HomePod Mania, and this is the iMore Show. Joining me today, this is Serenity Caldwell, by the way. I'm joining myself. But also joining me today is iMore editor-at-large and analyst Renee Ritchie, who has a HomePod I think I can spot in the background.
It's tiny.
It's droids.
so small. It's
so small.
right back there. It's like, yeah, but no, HomePod says hi.
Hello. Can you actually make it say hi?
Yeah. Hey Siri, say hello.
I can do that.
I don't know if you can hear it though. Maybe too far away.
She said I can do that. Okay, we'll do
Siri,
it.
what do you think of Amazon Echo?
I think, therefore I am.
Huh?
Yeah, I think you'd need to turn up the volume a little bit for us to.
We'll have to have Jim do that in post.
Yeah.
He can put in whatever. He could say whatever he
I'll
wants.
make it louder during the show.
Exactly. Joking about our editor Jim Metzendorf is iMore senior editor Micah Sargent. Hi Micah, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing so great because yes, as you mentioned, tomorrow is HomePod Day, and I have one en route. It was in Tennessee as of this morning, so
Woohoo.
yay!
Woohoo!
Are you gonna make a HomePod hat? Just put one on each side.
Yes,
That's terrifying. I don't like that.
it's the modern day boombox.
We're gonna move away from that and say hi to Lori Gill.
Hello.
Managing editor. How you doing, Lori?
Very well, thank you. I'm also excited. My HomePod should be arriving tomorrow as well. Only I am not having it delivered to my house because, like I was telling Serenity earlier, every time I'm looking forward to getting a package in, it doesn't show up until 8 o'clock at night. So I was able to have it delivered to the store. So that's what I chose. So I get to pick it up as soon as the store opens.
Smart.
Which I'll be standing outside going, open, open.
Let me in.
I hope you send at least one selfie of yourself doing that.
So since we're all talking about HomePod, I feel like that's a good place to start. We've talked about it a fair amount on the podcast the last couple of weeks, including about my test listen and Renee's test listen. But now Renee actually has a freaking HomePod, and I think he's trying to hook it up so it's sitting. Yeah, it really is so tiny.
It's
like
so
that
tiny.
that was the thing that struck me when I went in for my first listen. Is I'm like, this is the size of a Sonos One, and it looks even tinier than that.
It's smaller than Georgia Dow's head. We've measured.
It's almost smaller than your head.
It's definitely smaller than my hands.
I could look like Princess Leia if I got two of these, just saying.
Renee's very obsessed with getting two of them.
I love this cloth cord. Like if this proves more resilient than those horrible lightning, plasticky MagSafe cords, I want it everywhere.
See, that has been the standout thing, Renee. I keep hearing people talking about that cord, and like I read your review and watched your videos, and you were among many people who have talked about that cord. So can you explain it a little bit more? Because is it like it's fabric coated, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, well, first of all, some people are upset that it's actually built in. I don't know why it's built in. Maybe that's because they don't want to have a giant power brick on it or something. But it is built in. But it's made of this lovely cloth material. I don't know if the cloth material is acoustically transparent the way the cloth meshes on the HomePod, so that it doesn't create weird power distortions. I don't know. I just like it, and I have no idea if it is more resilient or not. I just know if it is more resilient, I want it everywhere because it feels like when Lori was talking about iPod cozies or tea koozies. Sorry, it feels so huggable. I just want it everywhere.
It's
Is
a
it-
cord koozie.
Is it flat or circular?
It's circular.
Cool.
Looks like a snake, like a white snake.
Kind of like the MacBook.
I'm gonna
like
plug
the
it in
MagSafe,
so you guys can hear it. 1 second.
MagSafe cords.
While you're plugging that in, Renee, I think a good thing to talk about is there's a lot of Twitter questions that you've been answering, and maybe we can pull out some of the most popular ones and talk about them on air, just to help clarify for some people, or just to give our opinions on things. So, for people who aren't following you on Twitter, maybe they still have those questions that we can answer. And since you've got one, you've got the answers.
Yeah, now's the time, eh?
So what do we want to know? What are the most burning? I mean, yes, it works with Apple TV. I got that question like 500 times.
That was one of the ones I was going to suggest, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what that means, about how it works with Apple TV. Maybe we can go into a little bit of detail with it.
So it doesn't, like, you can't pair it to your Apple TV like a dedicated sound bar and make it just exclusive. You can't marry it to an Apple TV. But what you can do is AirPlay from your Apple TV. You swipe down, you bring down the info menu, you swipe across, and you choose the HomePod as the source. And then it stays the source unless and until you try to AirPlay from some other device or you start playing Apple Music natively, at which point you'd have to set it back. But I've been using it all week, and it's quasi annoying, but I'm of the generation who still had to change HDMI inputs or receiver inputs like an animal. So it's no more annoying than we've ever had to deal with AV components, in my opinion. It's just whether or not you want to dedicate it to an Apple TV. I think some people will, but I think it's such a good speaker for more than that, that I'd be interested for Apple to make sort of a dedicated mode for those people who want it.
Mm-hmm. So I have an AirPlay speaker hooked up to my TV right now, which I actually only just got very recently. And I am having experiences with it cutting out a little bit, and I'm still troubleshooting what's causing the problem, but it might have something to do with my Wi-Fi signal not being clear enough. Is HomePod pretty much the same thing as any AirPlay speaker that if you don't have a good Wi-Fi signal, you might experience a little bit of cutout? Is this one set up particularly special?
Well, I have heard that the AirPlay team, Apple TV team, and HomePod team work to make it rock solid, and it's been rock solid. I haven't had a single dropout all week doing it that way. And it shouldn't have anything to do with your Wi-Fi signal, because it should make a direct peer-to-peer Wi-Fi connection.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why HomePod was delayed was because it wasn't rock solid. And I think with HomePod, we're seeing AirPlay actually do what it really needs to do.
Excellent. Okay, so you can use it with Apple TV, and to clarify, you cannot use it with your television set directly unless you have a television set that has AirPlay.
A cute little Apple logo at the bottom, really totally adorable, and it's non-stick, but it will stick to lint. Yes, FYI. But
so don't put it on your couch.
There is no, I'm doing that all the time. There's no line in on it. So if you have hardware connections, if you have Bluetooth connections, you're out of luck. It has to be AirPlay.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be AirPlay.
The one thing that surprised me though, and I know Serenity had a similar experience. I got to listen to it playing against the Google Home Max, which is more expensive than AirPod. And I am the opposite of Serenity. I don't know anything about music or audio, but even I could tell the Google Home Max was way worse. It was like a shoebox, and it was unidirectional. And I don't know, Serenity.
The thing about the Google Home Max, and granted, I really do want to preface that I haven't spent a ton of time with the Google Home Max. I've seen it on 2 separate occasions at a friend's place, in an absentia, like without anything else around it. And I also saw it during my test demo. And I have to say, the first couple times I saw the Google Home Max, I'm like, this is okay, but I like my Sonos better. Like, this is loud, but I'm just not, like, it's not the best speaker I've ever heard. And then comparing it directly to not only the Sonos, the Sonos One, but also to the HomePod and even to the Echo. I'm like, this has a lot more sonically alike with the Echo than it
What?
is. Yeah. Well, and so I want to clarify, like, what I mean by that is when the Echo plays loudly, or when you're just playing music on the Echo, it kind of has that like radio feel
Yeah.
to it, right? Where it's just everything feels very compressed, and that's how the Google Home excuse me, that's how that feels for me.
And you couldn't
It makes
move
you
off
cough.
center. It had a definite sweet spot where if you were standing right in front of it, it sounded like fine, not great, not as good as Sonos. But if you moved off center, it sounded like you were like no longer one of its favorite children. Where HomePod, you could walk all the way around it without problem.
Yeah,
So
that's
since we're
definitely
talking
it.
about the Google Home Max, are we talking about are the spec comparisons pretty similar? I mean, clearly the speaker array isn't the same if it's sort of hyper
I was
focused.
just being a jerk because people complain that HomePod is expensive, and I want to point out that Google Home Max is more expensive. And people say Apple's not a speaker company, but Apple is absolutely a speaker company for the last 5 years. Everywhere from iPad Pro on, they've been doing ridiculously good speakers, and I think that's really important because you have speaker companies that don't have the computer savvy of Apple or the silicon. Like this has got an A8 chip in it, and then you have services companies that aren't good at silicon or speakers. And you're comparing that to HomePod, and that's why I think like I'm deliberately trying to twist the discussion so that we look at it from more than one dimension. Not that it's
Yeah.
only a good speaker, but that you can't count out the fact that it's a good speaker.
And I think you're hitting on something when you're saying people are making comparisons of the HomePod with all these other types of speakers. So when it comes to the Google Home Max, it sounds like the price wise, the Google Home Max is really expensive, but it just pales in comparison sound wise.
Yeah, I think I don't know, Trinity can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Sonos One and the Google Home Max are the fairest comparisons right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I think obviously the HomePod I think is sonically closer to a Play 5 than anything else, and I really would. That's the first thing I'm going to be doing tomorrow when I get it, is to compare it against my Play 5. In terms of pricing and everything else and the internals, yeah, I think the Home Max is probably similar. But yeah, I want to reiterate what Renee said, in that in the sweet spot it sounds okay, but I was deliberately testing in the room that I was standing in. I deliberately stood about 18 feet away in a corner at an angle to listen to all of these. And I'd occasionally walk into the center of the room, but I made sure to always go back to that point. And when you're in that angled point, the Google Home Max gets really loud. That's nice, I guess, but it's not sonically pleasing, at least not to me. It's
What's
just very
interesting about the Google Home Max, as Renee mentioned, it's the fairest comparison, and that's because it does have built-in microphones that are supposed to be checking the room for audio and then adjusting the acoustics to go along with it. But when those early reviews of the Google Home Max came out, one thing that's been was very interesting to hear is that most people, as both Ren and Renee have noted, have said, look, it does all these cool things, that's great, and the bass is really powerful. In fact, there's one on Variety, they have somebody who flicked the lighter and then the bass like blew out the lighter. But they said it doesn't sound much better than a Google Home.
Yeah.
That is not good. Let me just go ahead and say that like right out here, folks. I have done not personal teardowns, but reviews of all the teardowns and specs for the Google Home, for the Amazon Echo, and for those whole line of products and their speaker systems. The Google Home speaker is not great. And so for the Google Home Max to cost as much as it does and still only sound as good as the Google Home, that's kind of embarrassing, to be honest. So it's interesting to hear that, this tiny speaker is outperforming more expensive speakers, but then also includes this technology that we often find in way more expensive speakers.
Oh man, Micah, the thing that I love so much is that I have home theater in a box. I have the Sonos home theater system. I have a bunch of Sonos. And when you set them up, like the home theater system, you had to put a little microphone in the sweet spot where you were going to sit, and it would tune for that. And if you didn't sit there, you didn't get as good an experience, as good a 5.1 or 7.1 surround. And with Sonos, you put it in its, what is it, true play mode, and it goes and it sends all the sound through, and you hear it tuning itself. HomePod, there's none of that. You plug it in, it asks you to play a song. Like it asks you to ask it to play a song, and then you say like play something that I like, or play a song, or play anything. And in the first few seconds of playing that song, it measures everything that's bouncing off the walls. It makes a complete acoustical model of the room and self-tunes. And then if you move it, it's got an accelerometer that re-self-tunes. So you never have to put a microphone. You never have to pick a sweet spot. You never have to sit there and wait for it to go ding 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 ding. It just works. And that is like set it and forget it. The closest to plug and play I've ever had.
Plug and pray, I like as an alternative. Now, Lori, you mentioned that we could get some questions answered, and I have pulled up some questions from Twitter if you're cool with that, Renee.
Oh, totally.
And I know you've been answering a lot of them already, but I have tried to find some more recent ones here.
The harder ones, right? I know your game, Micah Sargent.
So the first one that I have, and I do like this question because this is a little bit like me. If you're a bit of a control freak, the question comes from @DougWoo, that's DUGWU, or it's DUGWoo actually, on Twitter. It says, if you want to control HomePod just from the music app by manually let me try that again. If you want to control HomePod just from the music app by manually picking songs, is that fine? So instead of using Siri to do the control, can you just go into the music app, choose some music, and go from there?
So there is no remote control mode. There's no like I'm queuing things up on Apple Music and I want this to play on the HomePod and then keep playing this list and then play this album. All you can do is AirPlay from the app. I would love it if Apple Watch and Apple and iPhone and iPad could be remote controls for the HomePod and could hand off to them and let them take over, but that's not that doesn't work right now. But what you can do is from the music app or the lock screen or anywhere, you can tap on the audio source button and say send whatever's playing on my phone to HomePod, and then it'll keep playing whatever's playing on your phone.
Could you also let's say like you're going to have a party later, could I go ahead and make a playlist in my Apple Music account and then tell the HomePod to play that playlist?
Yes.
And
yeah, it'll sync all your goodness.
If I edit that playlist on the fly, I wonder if it would be updated for the HomePod.
I have edited things on the fly, and it won't change it immediately, but when it next does, so like if you change a playlist and it's in the middle of the song, that song won't disappear as it's playing it. But when it goes to the next song, it should pick up what you've changed.
It's pretty good.
Cool. Let's see. There's a lot of there are a lot of arguments in your mentions right now, so trying to find the questions in between those.
Someone asked me if Spotify made a Spotify speaker, would people be so angry that it didn't support Apple Music? And so I retweeted that, and now my mentions are a nightmare.
Yeah, I don't think. Okay, let's answer this question. Lori, what's your take? If Spotify made a Spotify speaker, would you be upset if it couldn't do Apple Music?
Well, so no is my quick answer to that. And people seem to be unable to understand. You can literally play any audio at all from your phone. You just have to do it through AirPlay. So you can play Spotify through HomePod. You can play Tidal through HomePod. All of that. You just have to do it through AirPlay. It's not directly built into HomePod. That's the difference between the two. So it's not like you get this HomePod and literally the only music you can listen to is Apple Music. It just means that if you want to listen to Apple Music, you can do it directly through HomePod by asking Siri to play that music for you. Or you can open your phone, you can play music, your playlist from Spotify, and then hit the AirPlay button, and you're getting the same experience. You're just doing something physically on your phone before that gets transferred to HomePod.
You can still ask Siri to stop and start it again. You just can't do all the fancy stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's something worth noting there because as a Sonos One user, I think one of the benefits to Sonos is because it has all of the integrations with Alexa, it's very easy for me to say to my Sonos One, wake word. Whoops. It's very easy for me to say to them, like, wake word, play, groovy music on Spotify, and then it will play a Spotify playlist, or it'll play a specific song on Spotify. So I understand people being kind of frustrated that kind of functionality isn't available for them on HomePod. So if it's like, if you really care about the voice control aspect of things, no, HomePod isn't going to have Sonos at launch. maybe in iOS 12 if they ever get around to music domains. But I mean, considering that I
Siri Kit
feel
for
like,
audio.
yeah, exactly. Like Siri Kit for audio would be lovely, but I'm also still holding out on like third-party maps apps. So until like we really haven't seen Apple cede any ground here. So I'm still very skeptical on that. So it's like if you really care, if you prefer Spotify and you really care about having audio recoil for them, then the HomePod's not going to be for you. But if you don't care how you start or stop your music, like if you have a bunch of Sonos speakers, you're used to doing it in the app already. You've been doing it in the app forever. The voice communication is a nice perk, but it's not the end all be all.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
honestly don't.
if you're a Spotify user, get Spotify to make a speaker as good as the HomePod that only plays Spotify. That would be rad.
I agree. And that's like, I don't foresee myself using the voice stuff too much anyway. Again, I mentioned before, control freak. Like I like to be able to, even with the HomeKit and the Home app, I rarely use Siri right now, at least, to control most of the stuff that I do because it's like too specific stuff, and I want things to be a certain color and a certain brightness and a certain, all at once.
So what I
And
figured out,
so,
Micah?
say what?
So this is, I think the HomePod is going to proselytize Siri in a way. And I know I sound like an idiot to anyone who's ever used an Echo or a HomePod because they already do this. But there's something so nice about just having like this little Android friend, like this little droid friend in your house that you can talk to. So I'm typing and I'm like, Siri, how do you spell XYZ? And it'll just tell me, and I just keep typing. Or I'll say, how far away is Georgia? And she's 5 minutes away, and I know how much time I have to work. And I never have to take my fingers off the keyboard. I don't have to switch screens. I don't have to switch apps. And human brains are terrible at context shifting. It's why you forget things when you change rooms. So I do this with Siri on the Mac already, but I don't even have to hit a button now. It's just sitting there, and I ask it all sorts of inane questions or tell it to do all sorts of inane things, set timers, change lights, all of this while I'm still working. And I found I use Siri on my I use Siri on my iPhone a lot, but I use it even more now, especially like when driving. Read my message, respond to my message, send Serenity a message, send Lori a message. How far is it till here? And maybe I am the old guy sitting in the apartment alone with cats. And this is my realization.
I'm the young guy sitting in the apartment alone with dogs, so it's fine.
So I think, yeah, it's making me a huge, like, not like Brian Rumley level, but a huge voice first advocate. It's just such a good interface for so many things, such a human interface.
That's a good thing to talk about then, Renee. What can Siri do on HomePod? I think there's a lot of questions about what you can do and not do. And I don't mean like the basics, like you're getting specific here. You can ask Siri a lot of little detailed questions. So talk about that a little.
Hey Siri, how do you spell relief?
Relief. RELIEF.
See, I should have asked for respect, right? RESPECT.
Siri sounds so good on the HomePod too.
It really does.
Microphones. No, I mean it's great. Siri, how do I get to Starbucks? Oh, I forgot the hey part.
You forgot hey.
Hey Siri, how do I get to Starbucks?
I wish I could, but I can't help with directions here.
Oh, that's because where you're living, right?
No, actually, this worked before. That's one of the things that still is. Maybe I asked her, hey Siri, where is Starbucks?
One possibility I see nearby is Starbucks about 1.8 miles to your south on Boulevard St. Jean in Dollardes Ormeaux, which averages 4 stars according to Yelp. It's open today from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Do you want to hear the next one?
So it's super. No, thank you.
It's the company stuff,
because there's no, and that's one of the reasons why I think we don't have all the Siri Kit domains yet. Like we can do notes, we can do lists,
It doesn't make sense to ask for directions because it physically can't give you turn-by-turn directions.
See, but that's why I want to mesh Siri.
I want
to mesh Siri so much where I just say, Siri, what are directions? And it'll say, here's Starbucks. I'm sending them to your phone.
There you go.
Siri, play. Stop, Siri. Or Siri, play Star Wars. I'm sending it to your Apple TV. I want all of these things to be one uni-mind that just manifests itself.
Especially Apple TV. I want to be able to control the Apple TV with, I think that's coming. I do want to pivot though, because we just saw that in Starbucks, Starbucks in Canada, that worked. At Brian Hughes on Twitter asks, if I cross the border and pick up a HomePod, is there any functionality limited or restricted when it's back in Canada? Thanks for your awesome and thorough review, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, so it depends. It depends. It depends on how you have your stuff set up. There are some people in Canada, like for example, I imagine when Serenity Caldwell is in Canada, she is using her iPhone set to U.S. region with a U.S. iTunes account and everything else. Like she's just like an American in Canada, and in that case, I believe it works completely. If you, I have my phone set to U.S. region, but I'm using a Canadian iTunes account, and then it won't do things like daily news briefs or sports briefs because those services don't exist for Canadian iTunes users. And some people might consider that a feature. I don't know. But there's very limited region differences. There are differences in accents and in metadata in Apple Music, for example, from region to region. So you might run into those. I never have. But that theoretically could be an issue. That's why Apple can't just release it in every country the way it does a lot of products. It really has the Siri team going through and saying, if a Scottish person asks for this song, and this is a publisher in Scotland, and it has this sort of information in it, that has to work as much as someone in Brooklyn or someone in Spain asking for the same music. And that takes a little while.
So if you had your phone set to a region in Canada, like if you were all in on Canada, would you not even be able to set up your HomePod?
I think it would still work. I mean, worst case, you set it to the U.S. region and set it. I mean, all it does is make you remember that like 1 or 2 countries in the world still use miles.
Okay. So it's doable, but there are some limitations and you have to do a couple workarounds. But
very few limitations that I found so far.
And it's highly likely that this is going to roll out across other countries soon. And like you were saying, Renee, they just have to make sure that it works for everybody in their own country so that you have a really great experience. So I'm
sorry,
sure.
I don't know what a chipbati or jammy dodger is. Please ask me something else. Serenity Caldwell, I cannot give you scones in America. I am so sorry.
But if it's scones.
I know, all the scones.
This is an interesting question. It comes from AJ Foos or Fuss on Twitter. Are there any bridges or adapters that offer auxiliary in that are able to AirPlay to HomePod?
I don't even want to know what sort of a cyborg mess that would be. You have to hook the thing up to the device as an ingestion point, and then like I'm sure like you can maybe hook it up to your Mac and then use some fancy Rogue Amoeba software.
But how could you even hook it up to your Mac though? Like through. Yeah. Actually, in fact, Rogue Amoeba does have, I think it's airfoil. I have not yet done any kind of work with it, but I will be, and I will be talking about it on iMore, and maybe we'll talk about it on the podcast about how to use airfoil with your HomePod. So yeah, that's coming.
Yeah.
So yes, sorta.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's something that I want to try just to see how that works. Because I've used the AirPlay options in iTunes before, just all on their own. So the possibility to sort of use that all together is interesting. This is another question that I find kind of funny because it's pretty easy. Oh no, I'm sorry. That question was not for you. That was for someone that they were arguing with. So we will not answer that. Can we actually, really quickly, I would love to tell you all about our dear friends at Thrifter. In case you didn't know by now, Thrifter is a new way to save money on everything from gadgets to home goods by shopping based on value and not hype. What does that mean? It means that they're looking for the actual real deals. It's not these fake deals where things only cost the company 4 cents to make and they say it's marked down to $1 from $4. No, it's stuff that actually is valuable. These are real deals, and they get thoroughly selected deals from places like Amazon and Best Buy daily. It's all the stuff with none of the fluff. If you go to thrifter.com to sign up. I'm going to go to thrifter.com right now, and I'm going to ask, let's have...
So, Micah, last week when you were talking about needing a humidifier, I went and bought a humidifier through Thrifter, and I got my discount on it. So thank you for that.
I'm so happy that you got a humidifier too. Like, you can go back and listen to that episode. I am a humidifier evangelist. They're very important for your health. That's all that I need to note. I do want to thank, there was someone who tweeted at us last week to show us that they bought the Lego ship in a bottle with
no, they didn't.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So this thing looks so friggin' cool. I could see Serenity's like, ooh, yeah, it looks really, really cool. And it was cool because Thrifter not only is looking for deals, but they're also looking for stuff that's either upcoming or has just launched so that you can make sure that you're among the first to grab it.
Can I make a suggestion, Micah? Just one suggestion.
Yeah,
Tesla
absolutely.
Roadster in a Falcon Heavy bottle. Lego should do that.
Yeah, that actually should be done. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are already people working on it right now because they could totally hear you answer or putting that out there. So here is an interesting one that is on the thrifter.com site. And then earlier, I'd like to challenge Renee to go to thrifter.com and find something on there that he thinks is
Dude, I'm
interesting.
there.
And we'll ask him about it. But the first one that I want to mention, there, for those of you who may be curious about sort of your ancestral makeup, your DNA, where you come from, right now, an $80 Ancestry DNA kit is on sale for $69, so that you could get the genetic test. And if I remember correctly, the Ancestry DNA kit is the one that's recommended by the Wirecutter as offering the best answers to those questions. So if that's something that you've been curious about in the past, head on over to Thrifter for that deal. And Renee, what deal are you spotting for us?
Oh, you know what deal I'm spotting, Mike. It's the iPhone 7. I love the caption here. First party is best party. Apple's iPhone 7 battery case is down to a crazy low price at $49. And I still think this is one of the best battery cases in the business because it's not about it's just about efficiency. It doesn't degrade your radio signal. It doesn't put it into mobile mode so that it starts, or it doesn't put it into plugged in mode. So it starts using a bunch of network activity. It does everything it can to make sure that you get as much charge as possible for as long as possible. And yeah, it's all Humpty Dumpty about it. But if you can get past that, it is just the best battery case on the market. And $49, you might as well steal it.
The Humpty Dance.
Humpty Hump, do the hump. Do the Humpty Hump.
So again, Thrifter, it's a new way to save money on everything from gadgets to home goods by shopping based on value and not hype. Go to thrifter.com to sign up and get those thoroughly selected deals. All the stuff, none of the fluff. Thanks so much to Thrifter for sponsoring this episode of the iMore Show. We love you. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is from at Rick Play SWARR on Twitter. Love the content of the HomePod Ask Me Anything. I listened on way in audio and it was not your usual standard.
I blew the audio, Mike. It was my first time recording video by myself without Martin helping me, and everything went wrong all the time, always.
I misunderstood this question. What I thought it was asking, so sorry about that. What I thought this was asking was if the HomePod in actuality sounded like it did in the video, in that it was sort of thin and tinny, whereas in real life it was.
It was me who was thin and tinny. The HomePod was fine.
Gotcha. This is. I do want to note. I saw a review, and I'm having trouble remembering which review it was, but they used the binaural microphones that they're shaped like ears, and they sort of try to reproduce the sound as best as possible.
They turned into a Mr. Potato Head.
Yeah, and yes, and then they played the different speakers up next to each other, and I thought that was a really neat way of trying to show over the internet. I mean, that's a problem, right, Renee? Could you actually? I'd love to hear some behind the scenes of your HomePod review and unboxing process with the videos.
Well, I mean, so it was just a nightmare, Mike. Everything went wrong all the time, always. Again, like my Mac Pro failed, my microphones failed, my cameras failed. So when I have that all happy and working, I'll do a tour, or I can get you to give me a bunch of questions and I'll do it. But I don't know if it's almost like Retina displays on a non-Retina screen, or DCI P3 or HDR displays on sRGB screens. You can't appreciate them. And I know like The Verge did a really good job trying to show you the different sounds using headphones, but you're still limited to the device that you're playing them on. So hopefully people can go to an Apple store and maybe they'll have demos set up or something. But I think it's really something you have to experience. And again, Serenity is way better at listening to the stuff than I am, but I could tell a difference and I didn't think I would.
Yeah, I think the biggest way I described it this way, I think on the last iMore show and on Query, but in essence, it kind of sounds the way that the HomePod separates the different sounds is really special. It kind of sounds like the difference between listening to music live in person versus listening to music on like headphones or a speaker, where they've managed to separate everything, that it feels more like you're having a visceral music experience. It feels the way that it does when I'm home and listening to my mom play piano in the next room. Like there's a different kind of audio essence there. And that's very hard to put into words.
Yeah, can we actually? I want to note, shout out to Rin. I believe it was Query. Yeah, where you, I think you put it into words quite well. And so you should absolutely. We'll put a link in the show notes. You should check out that that review that you did with. Wow, why can I not think of anyone's name? With Stephen Hackett, where you talked about sort of the audio separation and listening to a cappella, like going to an a cappella concert and comparing it to that. I thought that was really well put. And honestly, that is what got me so excited about the HomePod. Like that was the moment that I was sold for sure. So definitely check that out.
Her write-up she did after she got to hear the Pepsi challenge is awesome. Go read that.
Yeah, that one's really good. It's a really great comparison of the different speaker sounds. I was really fascinated with that particular one. Renee,
I didn't do it.
Can you blow out the speaker on the HomePod? I'm not asking you to do it. I'm asking, is this possible? If you turn it up to 11, will it sound bad?
Is there a song that you like, Lori Gill? Is there a song you want me to test with?
Play something. Wow. Okay. So if we want to get heavy, like do a lot of like bassy stuff, try one of your favorite rap songs there. See what comes up with that. And
it's never personal.
No problem. Here's the album, Business Never Personal by EPMD.
And now turn it up loud, and you can pull it away from the microphone so that it doesn't blow our eardrums.
Hey Siri, make the volume 100%.
That's very loud. Are you sure?
Yes. Hey Siri, make volume 50%. I turned it down.
Yeah, so I'm hearing just a slight bit of distortion, which is that always happens with
hey Siri,
you know.
volume 80%.
Plus, it's up against the mic and things like
that too. Hey Siri, stop. And also notice that no matter how loud it is, I'm just whispering to Siri and it is taking it in. I'm speaking in a normal voice and it understands me.
So from what I was hearing, and Micah actually pointed out, we're hearing it through your microphone. From where you were when it was at 100%, was there any level of blowout or distortion, or did it sound pretty much just as clear as it does at 50%?
So this was an odd situation because I was actually holding it and moving it around. And what it tries to do is while it's playing, make that acoustical model and then continuously use that AA chip to modulate the sound so it avoids as much distortion as possible. I don't think it can avoid all distortion, especially at incredibly high or incredibly low volumes, but it'll do the best possible job it can. So if you just put it on like a shelf and leave it, it sounds pretty good. It sounds better than I think any speaker I've ever heard. But I mean, if you really try, I'm sure you can find ways of going, I've reached the legal limits of the HomePod, suckers.
Yeah, I think it's important though to just make sure that like there are some speakers that no matter how good they are they're only good at 50%. And as soon as you hit above 50%, you're just starting to get distortion and it sounds bad. So
I love that at Nanny monitors me on the 100% thing. That's awesome.
Some people will hate that.
I
like it. I think that I'll just exclusively listen to throat singing.
Tubular throat singing.
Yeah. So we'll see how that sounds on the HomePod. No, that's very impressive.
Hey Siri, play Nessun Dorma.
Turandot, Act 3, Nessun Dorma, now playing.
Hey Siri, skip ahead 2 minutes. Siri, make volume 80%. Hey Siri, make volume 80%.
Okay, can you play Les Mis?
Hey Siri, stop. Sorry, Micah?
Can you play
while you're thinking, hey Siri, play Hamilton.
That'll work too.
No problem. Here's the album, Hamilton. Original Broadway cast recording by original Broadway cast of Hamilton.
How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a
Hey Siri, skip ahead 1 minute.
the Caribbean?
So one thing I want to say about this is they actually played.
Hey Siri, stop.
They played "My Shot" as kind of one of the demo songs, and I intentionally went, okay, they played the first minute and a half. I'm like, can we skip ahead 4.5 minutes? I want to hear the harmonies, because the harmonies in the middle of that, where they have the choral and the beautiful like rise up, that's when that section alone, that section is what sells HomePod for me. Also, Renee, you should listen to the Wild Reeds on HomePod, because that's also, speaking of a band that's almost entirely harmonics.
Awesome.
Like, hold on, play. Give me a second. Like, I don't know if
Also,
we can hear it.
While you're doing that, I love the BB-8 poster behind you.
Yay, BB-8. Let's see.
Are you soundboarding it into the mix? You guys are so fancy. I'm holding a speaker like an animal, and you, Mike, are just directing.
Nope.
Okay.
Play "Everything Looks Better in Hindsight" by the Wild Reeds.
Hey Siri, play "Everything Looks Better in Hindsight."
Everything Looks Better in Hindsight by the Wild Reeds, now playing.
When you wake up in the morning,
Skip ahead like 2 minutes.
Hey Siri, skip ahead 2 minutes.
To forget things.
Hey Siri, make volume 50%. Hey Siri, make volume 20%.
So quiet.
Hey Siri, make volume 70%.
Don't desert her now the way that you did me.
Hey Siri, stop.
Yeah, you could kind of tell it from the very beginning when we jumped forward, where there was that brief like harmonics.
Yeah, I heard that.
That's where HomePod is exciting, is you can hear every single voice and you can hear them clearly, and you can.
So here's the thing, Rin. So there are two things that, like, unnecessarily, I guess is the word. Maybe that's not the word. That confusingly like bring tears to my eyes no matter what. And it's like really touching scenes in movies, and then it's beautiful music and like people who have very impressive vocal qualities. When I heard that little bit right before it cut into the instruments, I kid you not, my eyes started to tear up, and I'm listening to it over headphones, over that mic. Like, I just got so much more excited, and my tear ducts are like, shoot, for the HomePod to
We
arrive
are now
tomorrow.
and always shall be your friend.
Because tomorrow when it arrives, like, I'm going to be listening to Regina Spektor, and I'm telling you, I'm not going from Dreamgirls, and I'm going to just die. I'm sure it's going to be great.
It's going to be so wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. But that's the thing, right? HomePod's not for everybody. I do want to clarify, like, we're talking a lot of like pro HomePod, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be really special as somebody who loves music. There are reasons not to buy a HomePod. There are reasons to buy a Sonos One. A Sonos One is still a really good speaker, and I'm very pro Sonos One. So I don't know. I don't
Or a
want
Dolby
people...
Atmos dumb speaker.
Yeah,
I mean, that will
also
serve
that.
you really well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think HomePod is for everybody, but I think the people who do pick up HomePod are going to really love it, if it fits their kind of room sphere. And the thing that I keep on suggesting to everybody, and I really want to suggest it on the podcast too, is like, if you're on the fence, not if you're like, I have no need for this, but like if you're on the fence and you're like, I don't know whether this makes sense or not for me, Apple has a 15-day return policy. And I honest to God think that the best way to experience HomePod is to buy one, put it in your home, and listen to it for a few days.
Yep.
And if after a few days you're like, I'm not really, like, Siri's not working for me, or I'm not feeling it, then box it back up and return it to Apple. And then no harm, no foul. At least now you know kind of how it feels. But it, like, I think that's the best, because even if they do listening demos in the store, I really don't think it's gonna it's going to encapsulate the way that it's going to sound in your house.
Yep.
So that's kind of my feeling on the matter. Is
Serenity
like
is wise.
test it out, and then depending on that, then either send it back or keep it.
Serenity is wise.
Very well put.
And on that note,
yeah, exactly. On that note,
we're gonna wrap up today's episode of the iMore Show. We might be back tomorrow for an AMA when our HomePods arrive, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, my name is Serenity Cobble, and I'm at Saturn. You can find Renee Ritchie at Renee Ritchie and on iMore.com and all of the things.
And I launched a new YouTube channel. Please subscribe.
Yes, exactly. He launched Vector on YouTube. The HomePod review, by the way, it's one of the best videos I think we've ever done. So if you're interested in those kinds of things, please check it out. You can find Miss Lori Gill at Appaholic on Twitter, APPOHOLIK.
Close.
It's like close, not quite.
APPAHOLIK.
Whoops.
No underscores.
Appaholic, not Appoholic. And you can find Micah at Micah Sargent on Twitter and on iMore, and on Clockwise on relay.fm. You can find me on Query on relay.fm. And find all of us on iMore just hanging out, relaxing, chilling out, cool, shooting some b-ball.
Yes.
Cool.
A couple of guys.
Most likely,
Were there a couple of guys
listening to HomePods.
Yeah, so great. Now I want an Irish version of Lori that is Appoholic.
Oh my God.
Appoholic.
All right, friends. Have a great afternoon. Listeners, thank you so much. And thank you very much to Thrifter for sponsoring this show.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, Siri, say goodbye.
I can do that.
Hey, Siri, say goodbye. Turns off. She doesn't care. I turned her off. We'll see.
Oh, it's like you saying goodbye.
She stops listening. She stops listening when you say goodbye.
Ask me for that. No, stop it.
There's a song.
Yeah. Cheers. Okay. Goodbye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.